Hey, Stormwater fam, Ty here. I've got some bonus content for you. So we've been doing what I call Stormwater Live over on LinkedIn, where we go live during lunchtime, and I have a guest do their conference presentation. After listening to these presentations, I feel like the audio brings a lot of value, even though you don't have the visual PowerPoint to go along with it. So we're going to provide that here. And then if you want, though, it is archived over on YouTube. So you can go to the YouTube channel, you can check out Stormwater Live, and you can see the full presentation as it was recorded. But I hope you enjoy it. And as always, thanks for listening to the Stormwater World Podcast. Shout out to our sponsor, Bloxam & Company. They have a sediment and erosion control stormwater inlet filter that's made of coconut fiber. I've known Eric Pierman and the gang over there at Bloxam for years. We've done business with them in the past, and we continue to do business with them to this day. It's a great product, and it's very simple to install. It comes in pads or rolls that you can customize to just about any stormwater drain, and it's very, very simple to maintain as well. You get a great visual when driving your site because you don't have to stop and look down into the drain. You can literally just put this product over the top of the drain inlet, and then you're going to see the sediment on top of it. After a rain event, you can have someone sweep it off and get prepared for the next event. They also offer a free sample, so make sure to check them out. You can go to bloxam.com, that's BLOCKSOM.com, or you can contact them at 219-363-0206, or shoot Eric an email at eric.pierman, that's PEARMAN, at bloxam.com. He can answer any of your questions you may have, as well as let you know where the closest distributor is in your area. Thanks. Let's get back to the episode. Hello, welcome in on the live. If you're able to make it with us, if you're watching the recording, hey, let me know. Hit me with a comment in the comment section. That would be cool. That way I know you watched the replay. But I'm excited to have a friend of mine here, Joe Moore. He is the chief brand ambassador for Siltworm and for ECS out of the great state of Indiana, where I grew up. And he's going to go over a presentation on sustainable BMPs and SWPPP design. And like I said before, there's going to be a lot of information covered. If you have questions, go ahead and hit us up in the chat. We'll get those questions answered as best we can at the end. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe so he can get started. Joe, thank you so much for taking your time to do this with us today.
Yeah, Ty, really appreciate it. You guys have been an awesome resource and doing some really cool work out there. So appreciate the opportunity to do this. Today we're going to talk about achieving SWPPP success and really using sustainable BMPs to achieve results on SWPPPs. So, like Ty said, that's a ton of information to try to cover. We've got a little less than an hour to do so here. So we're going to try to get through it, and we're going to try to have some fun with it, which is often hard in a webinar format. So I've got an agenda out in front of me. I will use what I'll call a semi-professional introduction to tell you who I am and why Ty actually asked me to speak today. I'm going to talk about sustainability and what that actually means. And then our current design practices, we're going to basically explore and see if they are sustainable, what we're designing currently. The United States Fish and Wildlife had a case study on sustainable BMPs and sediment erosion control. So we're going to present their findings in this webinar. And then we're going to talk about technology advances, 5 specific manufacturers in the industry that are really reaching out for sustainability. And hopefully where we land with all of this is we land understanding that sustainability is more than really just a cool buzzword. So getting into a professional introduction or semi-professional, I spent my formative years, I'll say, at Purdue University, and graduated in 2001, and I went to work as a constructor with a national home builder. Those of you who have heard me speak before, you've heard me say that I was a large polluter unknowingly. And some things changed in time in regard to regulation and water quality standards, and in time that has really shaped my career. So what that turned into for me is as a builder and as a constructor, I spent some really good years in that industry, understanding development and how dirt moves and what happens when water and dirt move together. And that really was the birth of our first company, which was Siltworm. We manufacture a sediment control device And that led us down the path to erosion and construction services, where in our market, Indiana and Chicagoland, we install anything and everything that you would see on a SWPPP, and not only install, but install, maintain, help clients basically reach their regulatory goals with erosion and construction services. We are affiliated with the Erosion Control Technology Council, the International Erosion Control Association, been an executive member of the Indiana MS4 Partnership, and NISWAG, which is Northwest Indiana Stormwater Advisory Group. And we've been published in Environmental Connection, Erosion Control magazines. So basically what we're saying here is that we try to stay involved on a local level, on a state level, and on a national level. And through these organizations and partnerships, we're able to have a good lens of what's going on from sea to shining sea, if we can say that. So jumping into sustainability, it has been such a buzzword in the last year or so. It's really been the coolest word out there that I could think of. I have 3 daughters, and they forced me to go see this Barbie movie over the summer, and I was thinking about if there's anything cooler in sustainability, and I would say maybe Ken in the Barbie movie, maybe that was cooler, but what does that actually mean? What is sustainability as we talk about it, other than this cool word that makes us all feel good? So according to the United States EPA, sustainability is based on a very simple principle. Everything that we need for our survival and well-being depends either directly or indirectly on our natural environment. For us to pursue sustainability is to create and maintain the conditions under which humans and nature can exist in productive harmony to support present and future generations. A pretty long definition, but what that's saying, what the US EPA is saying about sustainability is humans coinciding with nature without affecting nature. And so when I think about how cool that really is, we've done that for a long time. We haven't talked about it. I don't know, again, when I talk about what's cool in terms of sustainability, I just saw a lot of Olympians biting their gold medals, and I didn't know what that's about. And when I found out, I thought that was pretty cool. Is it sustainable? I don't know without breaking teeth. So we're going to get into that as we go through the presentation here. People do some pretty funny things like biting gold medals, but people also do things to survive. We farm and we build things. And when I say we build things, we build factories and highways and our houses, and we manufacture things in those factories. We ship. We do all kinds of things while we're at work and we're at home that affect our waterway. So if you see the screen that I have here, from agriculture to our living and what we're doing daily, we are introducing pollutants into our waterway. When we're done with that, when we're done with work and normal living, we also like to do recreational things. We hike and we fish and we boat and we swim, and really we live in and around water, the water that we're affecting on a daily basis. So sometimes that gets lost in translation, and we're going to try to hit upon how sustainability can help us with all of those things. So for the engineers and the stormwater professionals and the constructors, anyone that's on the call, what we can feel really good about being in stormwater is that we were doing really, really cool, sustainable things before it was popular. So when we talk about SWPPs, a SWPP is a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And so for a long time now, as engineers, we've been designing on how to keep pollutants from getting into our waterways. So when I say we were doing something before it was cool, this is the definition of sustainability. Us keeping pollutants from our waterways and not impacting the environment according to the EPA is the basis of sustainability. So congratulations to us in the industry on the call. We were sustainable before it was cool. So I don't know how old many of us are, but I remember when I was a kid, the more you know would always pop up. What I've learned as an adult is the more I know, the more I suffer. So I'm going to talk through this a little bit as we push forward here too. This will be a theme in my presentation as we move forward. But I thought it was a fun little icon for us to look at. Clean water, according to a 2011 National Center for Biotechnology Information study, just over 50% of our world's population lives within 1 mile of a surface freshwater body, and only 10% of the world's population lives more than 3 miles away. What that tells you is we have set up as people around water. And so when we talk about sustainability and those stormwater pollution prevention plans and how cool it is that we do this stuff as engineers and as stormwater people, there are some different opinions out there. Some people at this point are arguing that what we're doing on our stormwater pollution prevention plans is not cool in terms of sustainability. So how could that be? How are we getting into a place now where these studies are happening saying, hey, we really have to think about how we're doing this? And the issue that we're hearing about consistently in the stormwater world is geotextiles. They're everywhere. So if you were to look at those stormwater pollution prevention plans, we're using geotextiles. What are geotextiles? Geotextiles are permeable fabrics that are used in association with soil that have the ability to separate, filter, reinforce, protect, or drain. And they're typically made from polypropylene or polyester. And this is where the problem comes in terms of sustainability and where the conversation has went. So in the industry, we think that geotextiles are good. We manufacture products using geotextiles. And something really cool with, with the internet at this point, and I'll call AI, if you just type into your Google bar some of these questions, you'll get some pretty cool answers. But when we're thinking about geotextiles and why they can be bad, as you dig in, the thermal degradation that happens, the oxidative degradation that happens, and more so the landfill degradation. When you look at these types of plastics that are being used, what's hitting the discussion is, are these things ending up in our water column as they start to degrade? And so when we look at those, the answer very simply is yes, polypropylene is a plastic that is in many products, including packaging and medical devices and toys, and in our world, geotextiles, but they break down into microplastics, and those microplastics are making it into our waterway. So that's where the discussion is becoming very relevant to us in sustainable SWPP design. If we were to look back at our SWPP and say, well, what are the tools that we use? We use road and landscape fabrics. Again, geotextiles that are made with those plastics. Silt fences and fabrics are typically our perimeter controls on these sites. We use structural geogrid, again, that are made of geotextiles, dewatering bags. So there's many processes that we're using on a SWPP that we're using these geotextiles. Now, does that mean they're bad? The way that we really have to look at this is, hey, we're keeping the sediment, the number one pollutant in water, from making it to the waterway. There's got to be a give and a take with all of it. So the question here when we talk about SWPP and SWPP design, should we quit using these things? The absolute answer is no. Of course we shouldn't. Should we use them carefully? Should we design more carefully? Yes. All the information that we get helps us to be able to design those SWPP plans. So getting back into the more you know, we're talking right now about the chemical and biological things that happen. We still have states in our country today that allow for and have bans for tackifiers that are petroleum-based. So when we talk about chemical and some of the things that are happening on the SWPP, the question always comes, hey, has regulatory caught up with the specification books? So we'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation, and what are the costs of these things, and how are those specification books outdated? How does this stuff happen? How do we have petroleum-based tackifiers? How do we have state regulations that have concrete washout facilities that can be subgrade? And when you get a leak, that material is leaking directly into the grade. So lots of things like this that are still out there. And when you think about washout and concrete washout, it can be as caustic as Drano. So you look at some of this stuff and the impact to our water and say, are we doing this the best way? Giant miscanthus is a grass that will grow up to 12 foot per year, and it's considered invasive in 25 states. And we have filter sock manufacturers that are filling with it and possibly introducing that into the waterways. So is this the best management practice? Yes, we're capturing sediment by doing it, but is there a better way? So again, the more you know, the more you suffer. We learn things as we fight through this and as we do what we do in the field. We've talked just really quickly here about biological impacts and chemical impacts. And really that breakdown and the science behind it is very scientific. As these things break down and as those plastics are introduced into our waterways, some not so good stuff starts to happen. But we're also going to talk about physical impacts. What are the physical impacts of some of the best management practices that we're designing in our SWPPP plans? And so when we think about that, plastics and microplastic pollution is created through chemical and biological issues. So when we talk about physical issues, the answer is very easily, yeah, there are lots of physical issues that are happening. The big spinning arrow at the bottom talks about digestive tract obstruction, things wrapping around the bodies of animals, the actual physical coverage. And so this is where there's been some really neat information shared in the last couple of years. In 2022, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service did a study, and this study was based completely around erosion control products. So if you just read this slide, it says the purpose was to prevent the movement of topsoil. That's what we're really trying to do in containing that pollutant. But the purpose was to say, hey, are we using the best things we can use to do this? And really this study had all three of those things, biological, chemical, and physical, but there was a lot about the physical issues that are happening as well. So if you go to the last sentence, it says degradable, photodegradable, UV degradable, all these different types of degradable plastics, including polypropylene and nylon and polyethylene, are not acceptable alternatives. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is looking at this saying, hey, we can't do what we're doing in terms of those things. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife does not write the specification books for the EPA or the state level. They're giving guidance to say we have to consider these things. So when you dig into their study, they say that erosion control products that are left in place create a physical issue that turns biological and chemical as these things start to break down. And they say plastic netting of any type, including polypropylene, nylon, polyethylene, polyester, if they're designed to stay in place, we could have an issue with microplastics in our water column. They talk about silt fence and how silt fence, which is the most widely used product on a SWPPP plan, can create migratory issues or issues for migratory animals. So thinking about, hey, are we trapping things here? Are animals dying because we're doing this? Is there a more sustainable way to do it? The real interesting part is when they get into different netting materials that are being used in blanket conditions and what those materials are, and more so how they're manufactured and how they work. And so, the capture of snakes and birds and all the things that are being trapped in the netting are again becoming an issue in terms of sustainability. So the question it forces us to ask ourselves is, as we're capturing the pollutant that's going to make itself to the waterway, because we don't want to kill the fish and we don't want to harm the water that we're drinking, are we impacting the animals in a negative way? And the answer is, of course, yes. So really for us as designers and us as people in the erosion control world, our job is to find that harmonious balance and figure out how to do this the best way. And so when you dig real deep into the study by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, you'll find that there are recommendations in terms of, hey, if you're going to do this, this is a better way. This is more sustainable. Use a loose weave or a non-welded, a movable, or jointed netting. So they're not saying, hey, you can't go out and use any netted product, or we recommend not to do any of that. They're saying there's a good, better, best, and there are ways to do this. So when you look real closely at an actual weave, there's a leno or a gauze weave that will move. So if a snake does get tangled up in it, or a bird, they do have the ability or the access to get out of it or to free themselves. There are other products that don't have that leno or gauze weave that are fixed. And once something's tangled in them, they're stuck, and that's typically where they perish. So when you look real closely at these weaves, you'll see joints that it can actually move. If you see how they alternate here in this particular picture, you'll see that we have the ability, or that BMP has the ability to make that not happen. And so are we getting to that level on our SWPPP designs? Are we looking at what we're specifying, or are we just generally saying use some sort of blanket? We all know the benefits to these products. The benefits are that you're introducing a number of ways to keep that seed that's underneath moist and really inhibiting or making its growth go better, right? Just quicker and better. So when you think about that, always a good, better, best. Are we getting to that level of detail on our SWPs as we design? And so, or are we not? Are we just saying, hey, use a blanket, and then the contractor comes along and uses the most cost-effective blanket he can get his hands on, and the impact is we lose a lot of creatures in the process. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife summarizes, and they say, avoid using any plastic netting of any type. Degradable, photodegradable, UV degradable, oxo-degradable, or oxo-biodegradable plastic nettings. They talk about, again, polypropylenes and nylons and polyesters and polyethylenes. It's lots of different types of plastics. Those erosion controls that are left in place, they talk about that. They talk about, again, silt fences. So the things we just ran through, we've got a United States service saying, hey, designers, we might not be doing the right thing here. They're advising against it. And so as a designer, that really challenges us. If I think about all the things that we can use in our toolbox, we have a federal agency saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't. What are they looking at? And again, I don't think there's a right answer in terms of yes or no. It's the balance in between of, can we do it effectively? Are we following the manufacturer's guidance, right? If we leave the silt fence in the ground and we never remove it, what kind of damage are we creating? We are vegetated, but now we've got a barrier where the spotted turtle can't move for the next 8 years, and we just ruin that migratory pattern. So it's those types of things where, in many instances, the manufacturers of these products have specifications that sometimes are followed and sometimes aren't, and when they're not, some pretty bad things happen. So they also say, hey, instead do this, right? When we talk about those netting products, they're saying use natural fiber netting. There are different fibers out there that are natural, that can be used, that are biodegradable. Use that loose, non-welded, removable, jointed netting. Stake your erosion control blankets and make sure they're trenched into the ground. So all of these things that can affect, again, that animal kingdom if they're not done right. Or you can skip all of that and use hydraulically applied products. So if we're thinking in terms of sustainability, is this the best management practice? So I'll say owning a company that installs all of these things, when you look into the practicality of all of that, there are applications for any of these. Hydraulically applied products certainly have benefits, but they also certainly have downfalls as well. Are we in a rainy season where we're going to apply this and then we're going to have to reapply? And so there are some great companies out here. Profile Products is one of them that I can name that are doing some really neat things with tackifiers and soil amendments and being able to solve those issues as they come up for engineers. So again, the idea isn't to eliminate any of these, but how do we harmoniously make them work together to create that sustainability? In the state that I live in, I apologize, but this is a super graphic text slide, maybe one of the most graphic I've ever had. But in the state that I live in Indiana, we have 14,000 deer a year that are hit by cars, and that's reported. So for those of you that are on the call, I would just ask that you stop for 5 seconds and think, have you ever had an encounter in your vehicle with a large animal? Typically, if I'm in a room and I'm chatting about this, most people's hands go up, and the next question I would ask is, did you report it? 14,000 deer hit annually are reported. What amount are not reported? And federally, when we go to large game, there's 1.5 million crashes per year and over $1 billion being spent on these types of incidents. Most importantly, over 200 people die per year in our country as a result of running into big game with their animals. So when we think about that, we're going to start to talk about the physical impacts of our design. Using the straw wattle in road construction, and I'm just going to go a little further here. When these deer run out of things to eat, especially in the wintertime when the acorns are gone and you've got some snow cover, they'll seek out the straw wattles and they'll try to eat the straw. And what's really intriguing about it is straw doesn't have nutritional value for deer. Some other grasses do, but straw in its format doesn't, and deer will gorge on it sometimes until their death. So if you look at design standards and what we're doing, are we bringing the animals to the road when we do this? So we say, hey, don't use silt fence in this application because of X, Y, or Z. Don't use straw wattle because of X, Y, or Z. For the designers and the engineers, what can we use? Are there there rolled filtration products that are filled with things other than items that animals eat? The answer is yes. Have we ever thought about it while we're doing a bridge design? Maybe, maybe not. These are the types of trainings that provide that information or have us thinking maybe at the next level. So we could argue that, hey, using these things aren't great. Now, I want to get back to a really cool part of this presentation is there are a ton of manufacturers out here that are looking for sustainable answers. They're looking to continue to solve that issue. So I'm going to cover just 5. These aren't the only 5. These are 5 real easy ones to cover for today's presentation. Of course, I'm going to mention Siltworm. That's our product. We have a bioworm filter sock technology that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about Flexamat, which is a hard armor system. FODS, which is a construction entrance system, a GatorBox. And then I'm going to talk about a really cool post-construction best management practice called pave drain. And these are just some examples of where the industry is going in terms of sustainability. So for us with bioworm, we manufacture a filter sock, and we have a netting material that when it goes through that degradation process, it does not introduce any microplastics into the water column. That launched for us in Q1 this year. Super, super cool thing. If you go back to us as a filter sock manufacturer, you say, hey, well, what's that look like in terms of your standard product? Our standard product, of course, yes, we use polypropylenes and polyethylene and all the plastics over the years. We have a removal process in the guideline that says, hey, you have to remove these things when the job site's complete, when vegetation is established. So we've always been on that side of sustainability and saying there's a good, better, best way to do it. What we find in the marketplace is sometimes these things get left behind, and we really wanted to design one that could be left behind. And so we've been able to do that with our bioworm product. And what really happens is through that degradation, it goes through that process a little bit faster, but again, not introducing those things into the water column are really what's key. A quick video, shifting gears as I talk about another BMP here. I won't make you watch all 50 seconds of that because I think it's the worst sound ever, but that's what rip-wrap manufacturing looks like. But if you could just slow down and think about what it takes to create that one truckload of rock, the amount of energy, the amount of fuel, what you're doing in terms of the earth with taking that rock from the earth and the mining, and what happens in mining in terms of water pollution. We use that stone, we turn around and we use it as an energy dissipator to get sediment out of the water. Is that the best management practice? My answer very simply would be no, there's much better out there from a design standpoint. And when you really look at technologies that are out there that are thinking about this, Flexamat is a wonderful example. It's a hard armor that's used in the same areas that riprap would be used, and it has some really big benefits. When we talk about the energy it takes to produce and haul stone, one truck of Flexamat typically equals about 30 trucks of riprap. So if we're going truck per truck and we're thinking about what happens there, these products are phenomenal in terms of sustainability. And when I look a little deeper and I think about Flexamat, it can be vegetated. So when we talk about Mother Nature and filters and what's been given to us in terms of sediment control, vegetation is always number one. So the fact that you have a BMP that's a hard armor that can be vegetated, that eliminates that riprap situation and typically shows a much better, just a much better performance all the way around is a huge win. So again, check the box for sustainability. Flexamat is an awesome product for that. Another one I think about is a new technology called FODS. Forever in the construction industry, we have used stone construction entrances. So going back to that video you just saw, what does it take to get that stone there, and what's it look like? And furthermore, is it effective? We could all answer yes, when done right, it's effective. Is it high maintenance? Yes. When we use stone, it's high maintenance, and we have to do it over and over again to do it right. So are we doing the right things? When we talk about FODS, they're using a recycled product that can be reused, that achieves much better success rate in terms of sediment retention than stone. So as designers, when we're designing our SWPPs, are we considering this? Something that always comes to mind as we're designing is cost. Can this be introduced as a cost savings? So the folks at FODS and the folks at Flexamat and the folks at Siltworm would always say, hey, we could educate on the cost side, and we're typically, if we can't get these things to market without being a cost saver, they die before they get to market. So yeah, a lot of times that conversation is, of course it's a cost saver. Let me show you the maintenance. Let me show you what happens on that end. But to the term of sustainability and what we're doing and what we're trying to do with these technologies, there are some really, really good devices out here doing those things. Another quick video here on a really sustainable application would be the GatorBox, and I'm going to share 2 minutes with you.
Introducing GatorBox, the portable sediment trapping system that brings high-performance municipal authority technology to your construction sites. Built on an engineered 40-yard roll-off chassis, GatorBox can be easily moved to, from, and around a construction site. It can operate out of level. Just set it down on a reasonably level, stable surface. It's simple to use. One person can set it up and be operational in under 1 hour. GatorBox has no moving parts and no filters. It doesn't run on electricity or hydraulics. Here's how it works. GatorBox is designed to devour 500 gallons of muddy water per minute from any standard external pump. Additives are introduced, and the muddy water travels through an advanced mixing system where clumping begins. This process is called flocculation. As the clumping muddy water flows into the settling tank, the clumps drop to the bottom, forming a concentrated slurry. The slurry is continuously pulled out at 50 gallons per minute and sent externally for additional processing. At the top of the settling tank, 450 gallons per minute of continuous, clean, low NTU water enters the center spillway and exits a 10-inch output port for return to the river. This separation process operates continuously and is enhanced by 2 common municipal authority innovations that have been engineered into the GatorBox: lamella tubes and Stamford baffling. So, what does this new innovation mean for you? If you're responsible for taming muddy water on construction sites, GatorBox is your new tool for achieving better workflow, lower costs, and faster compliance. This Gator has got your back.
So when we talk about design and our SWPPP practices and our designs, we just shared information on construction entrances and dewatering and perimeter controls and ditch check applications and slope interruption. We talked about or been able to check a lot of boxes with BMPs that are sustainable, that are also cost effective. Oftentimes we skip to talk about post-construction when we're actually doing the construction design itself, and we think about stormwater and the long-term lasting impact. There are some great technologies out here. And so when I talk about post-construction, when we think about the difference between asphalt and pavers and how these systems can work, there's a paver out here that, from a scientific standpoint, pave drain is phenomenal, and so much so that the technology that's available in terms of how much stormwater are we capturing, are we creating sheet flow, or are we minimizing it? What's going into our storm sewer systems? So there's some really neat technology out here that when I think about, hey, how can we do it better? It doesn't only stop on the SWPPP design, it goes into construction design and say, if we think about water and what we're doing right with water, can we use these types of devices to achieve success? And again, the very simple answer is yeah, we not only can we do that, but when you look at the math and science behind it, 65% more TSS removal. And so you just, again, getting into all the numbers, every one of these companies can share that information, but there are better answers out there. They just need to hit the design. So what's really cool with this is this type of technology has state-of-the-art infrastructure. It's really what it is. So when you get into that, you say, hey, we're gonna use this for this parking lot. What does it look like? It looks like we're taking all that water under the parking lot into the ground as we intended versus sending it elsewhere, and we're preventing flooding. And what's the impact of that? So again, across SWPPP design and even construction design, there are opportunities everywhere to be sustainable. And really, again, sustainable it's not only cool, it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to shift gears here and just ask the folks on the call to think about this picture and just think, do we know what that is? Often when I'm presenting in person, that's always easier to do than a webinar because you can kind of read the room and ask some questions and pick on some people. We can't do that on a webinar. But some of the stuff that I get is that this is a thermal image or a thermal map. People usually know that I'm talking about stormwater, so they'll dive in and say, well, it has something to do with rainfall. And I'll tell you, really what this is this is the world's freshwater availability map. So as we're thinking about sustainability and what we're trying to do with nature, this is so relevant. There are areas on this map that are red, and those areas that are red have a shortage of water. And so we think about that in our country. We're hearing many instances today where there are water shortages in the West, in the Southwest, Central America, Mexico City. There was just an article about how they could be out of water in the next 10 years. There's lots of stuff happening. What we miss out on sometimes is how that coincides with our population. If we look at the chart that's on the screen now, our population from 1900 to 2000 is almost eightfold. So we've had a parabolic move in population. When we think about that, we have less resource than we've ever had. We might have the same amount of water that's been on Earth, but we have way more folks that are using it. We might have less or more animals, that's always debatable, but there are way more people depending on them. So the idea with sustainability is to make sure that we're paying attention to this, to say, hey, we only have so many resources. Our animals are resources for us. We use them for our food, we use them for transportation, we use them for all sorts of things. We have to protect those resources too, not just water. You know, it's real easy when we're in water to talk about fish and what the impact can be with sediment and fish, but as we think about vegetation and what our animals eat and what we eat, all that stuff has to work harmoniously together. And as we broach 10 million people on this earth, those resources are going to continue to be minimized. So as we're thinking about sustainability and why you hear everyone talking about it and why it's so cool, it's so cool because we have to do it. It's not something that is just going to be here for a little bit and we're going to start talking about the next thing, right? The Olympics are cool. Are they sustainable? So you think about what this all means. In the state that I live in, we do a study, and we do a study every 10 years to say, hey, what's making it into our waterways? We take a 10-year data set. So when I say we do this study every 10 years, for 10 years we collect data, and then we put that information to look at all the things that are making it into our waterways, the nutrients, the ions, the metals. It's 8,500 stream samples with close to 700 trend analysis per year. And what we find out is while we're doing all these things with regulation and we're doing all this stuff with education and we're making all these efforts to be better, to use sustainable products, what's really happening here, anywhere where you see a red bar is a watershed where we have a significant statistical increase in suspended solids, which means we're getting more pollutants there than we did the 10 years prior. So I feel good in my state because there's some great information, these types of things that are happening. But I think the issue for all of our people involved, our designers, our engineers, our regulators, is we are having a tough time keeping up with the influx of population. And that's putting the strain on our natural resources. So when we talk about sustainability, we, again, have to start with design and say, are we doing it the best way possible? So real interesting information out there that would show that we have significant uptrends in our watersheds in terms of pollutants. So if we have an increase in pollution and we have a decrease in our water resources, what can we do? What should we do? Does this tie us back to our sustainability conversation and say, well, if we use sustainable practices, how's that affecting us? Can we put math to that? Can we say, okay, we've chosen to do these, and this is what it looks like 3 years later? And the answer to that is yes. Our states and our regulators are doing that currently. They're currently tracking these things to come up with what the new guidelines are going to be. We're renewing permits every 5 years to say, hey, we know we're going to learn some things. However, what's so tough for designers is our specification books don't always keep up with technology. And when I say that, I can pick several states across the country. Virginia is a wonderful example where they had one of the oldest guidelines available. I think the last update was 1996, and now they just released over 1,500 pages of information saying, hey, there are better ways to do this. So what happens in that timeline is what's tricky for designers and engineers, and they say, hey, are we even allowed to use that? Can we do that? Often the answer is yes, and often it can be supported with mathematical data and scientific testing to show why it's better. So what gets easy in design, in construction, and in engineering, what gets real easy is doing things like you've always done them, and not questioning or not saying, hey, can we do it better? And so the answer is we can always do it better. We can always figure out how to make the result better, even if we're as best as we could be. So the challenge for everyone is to pick your why. Why do I want to do it better? For me, I mentioned earlier that I have 3 daughters. This is my youngest catching her first bass.
Richard, you have a fish.
Keep reeling.
No, no, no.
Whoa, it's a good one. Holy.
I want to throw it back in. Wait, do we already say?
So I would challenge the folks that are on the call to pick your why, right? It's real easy to go to work and do the same thing you did yesterday. But as we think about sustainability and our resources and our lack of resources, think about that. For me, very personal, but I want to leave the place better than I found it for my kids. And so that's not everyone's motivator. Some people go to work because they want to make more money tomorrow than they did today. And so pick your motivator and figure out how it ties to sustainability and push forward. On our team, we have lots of folks that can help you. I'm the founder and chief brand ambassador. Tiff is in charge of national sales. We have regional salespeople, operation managers, all sorts of people that are tied into this for many different reasons. The guy that put this all together, Ty Garman, a huge thank you from us because Ty is tying the industry together on an information share to make those resources better for everyone. So this is the portion where we have questions and answers opportunity for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, number one, thanks, Joe. That presentation is so good. It's so good. I feel like there's a lot of suffering. Like the more you know, the more you suffer. I'm like, man, you got to get me to the solutions, Joe. I'm definitely suffering over here, but you rounded out with some great ideas. I mean, it's so like, oh, here we are. We're trying to fight the good fight. It's like, wait, what? We're doing it wrong. We've been doing it like this. We're trying to make some headway, and now we got to do it. Now we got to pivot and do it a little differently, or put a little bit more forethought in how we're doing it. And it's just, man, it's a never-ending battle, right, for all the stormwater warriors out there. Thanks for doing the presentation. If you had, do you have any frequently asked questions, or what would be the top 3 things you get asked about after you do a presentation like this, where you just kind of, you just bombed us with all the plastics and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And even though you provided some solutions, I gotta guess that there's probably a couple of questions that come up over and over again.
There are a couple. Number one is cost.
Right.
Everyone always wants to know.
Right.
It's the biggest challenge for a designer. For a designer to keep a relationship with anyone, coming to them with something that costs more typically isn't a good relationship scenario. And that ties to the regulatory aspect. Hey, can we do all this cost effectively? and you've heard that, hey, we're doing so much of this that it's becoming too expensive to build anything. And that's always become the counter argument. And so when we talk about costs and where that intersection is with sustainability, there are always those challenges in terms of cost. Can I dewater this way and buy a dewatering bag that costs this, or do I have to have this huge thing on site that costs more money? So that's always the biggest challenge in all of this. And again, I mentioned for us as manufacturers, we know that hurdle exists. We typically have to be very conscious of bringing products to the marketplace that fit within those budgetary guidelines. And so that's when I go back to maintenance. And when we look at maintenance and how we're actually doing things on sites when we get into the construction world, there are typically huge cost savings. When I think about post-construction and pave drain, the cost savings opportunities for municipalities with that type of product on the post-construction side, simple flooding, what does that cost? And so when you think about that as an engineer, and you say, hey, the impact in Houston when we had our last hurricane was blah. Well, we also just paved all this area. How much water went where it wasn't designed to go? When did that overflow happen? Are we getting so? Cost is always one of those things that we think about and we talk about. Unfortunately, we stop up front. We look at the initial cost and we're like, oh, that doesn't make sense, right? Until something bad happens. And so most of us manufacturers are very aware of that scenario, and we know we have to have a solution there. Another question that I get quite a bit that I touched very briefly on is from the regulatory standpoint. Hey, why isn't this stuff in my state guideline? It's a huge challenge as new technology is introduced to states just to even vet that technology. 25 years ago, I would say that the stormwater industry barely existed. The technologies that you had available were A and B. Now they're A through triple Z. And that goes hand in hand really with regulatory. Is there regulatory enforcement? Are regulatory people becoming educated and informed about what's here? And when they do, what does that process look like in terms of updating specification guidelines? And that becomes really hard too, because if you have something that's approved versus something that's not, are we going to take the risk and use it? Am I being sold a bill of goods that something does something that it doesn't? And so all of those things coming together is always tough. In terms of sustainability and saying, hey, we go back in that presentation, I would sit here today and I would say that silt fence is a good product when it's installed properly and when it's maintained properly. And if you do what the manufacturer says, you're not going to introduce much into your waterways in terms of microplastics. Now, the product itself, we have a polypropylene product as well, and when that goes to a landfill, what does it do? What does it have the potential to do? So do we often think about our SWPPP designs in terms of what happens when these things go to the landfill? The answer is probably no. We don't.
No,
and so those are the guidances that are being offered. How many of us heard about microplastics and that danger in our waterway prior to 5 years ago? So we do things, and then we get new information based off of what we figure out. And that's the more you know problem, right? The more you know,
right?
The more harder it gets.
Yeah,
To make that sound very simplified. So yeah, those are questions that always come up.
Well, I think you're well positioned, and I encourage people to reach out to you since you're on both sides of the fence, right? You're a manufacturer and you're an installer with your other company, with ECS. So you're having to definitely find that balance to do the right, like you said, to do the right thing. So I think that's an interesting almost juxtaposition that you live in, and it uniquely positions you to help others, right? On that may only live on one side of that fence, because for the most part, most of the time, if I'm talking to somebody, they're either a manufacturer or they're a service provider. Very rarely, I feel like, I've been thinking about that, are they both, right? Where they're doing, and it's not just that you're installing your product. I mean, you do erosion construction services. So it's like you're doing a project, and I'm assuming you try to use your product if it fits, and then you got to incorporate, which is why you had all those other products. So I don't know if you have any online resources, or if it's a phone call, or if you're like, no, I'm really busy, don't call me for that, because it's just so hard to you just got to look at every project to project, or what your thoughts are on that, or.
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah,
internally here we have a team of professionals, right?
Right.
And I'm just one of the many people that work here. So my opinion would be we'd never turn an interaction, a phone call, anything like that away.
Right.
When I go to work in the morning and say, hey, why do I do this all? I'm passionate about clean water. And if we can be a resource as a company for clean water for anyone and any aspect of it, we want to be. It's an information and education share. And that's the truth. And so when you get into that, of course we would do all that we can. None of the folks that I talked about earlier, Pave Drain or Flexamat, none of those folks have paid us anything. This isn't an advertisement. We don't do design. These are things that I know from being in the construction world and the industry that I'm in that work well. I want to talk about them because I'm a clean water freak.
The clean water freak, right?
Yeah,
The clean water freak.
I want to talk about those.
Yeah. And I could do like that's a great opportunity for like just a really, really overt plug. Like, yeah, Clean Water Freak. That's an episode of the Stormwater World podcast. So
yeah,
go search that out on YouTube and watch it.
See what you find.
You can you can hear Joe preach some more about clean water. Hey man, as we wrap up, I got to ask one more question, and it's very important. It's very important.
Go for it.
Because you were so kind as to give us a little preview, and I say us because my wife, co-founder of Digital Stormwater, with me. We're always looking at everything together. So you sent over your presentation, and I was looking at it yesterday evening, and there's that clip with your daughter, but it's kind of, number one, it's hilarious. Like I couldn't tell, is she crying? She's laughing so hard, and she's so excited catching that fish. It's just so funny. The audio is so funny. But what I need to know, because you cliffhangered us, did she throw it back in herself? Did she throw that fish back in herself?
She knows how to take that pass and flip it with her hands.
All right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she threw it back.
That's awesome.
And now even if I catch one, I don't get to throw it back. She throws it back.
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Is there any hanging on to it first? She give it a hug or anything before she just or she all business? Is she all business?
You know how it goes. The first one of the trip always gets a kiss on the lips, and then it goes back in, and then the rest of them just get their easy release. So, yeah,
that's great. That's great. Hey, again, thank you for taking the time for doing this with us here live on LinkedIn today. If you guys have any more questions for Joe, find him on LinkedIn. Google it, like I tell everybody, they ask me questions all the time. You could probably Google that. Google it, Siltworm, erosion control services, like I said, out of the great state of Indiana. And Joe Moore, man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Ty, it's mutual, man. I love what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Stormwater World Podcast. And a big thank you to our sponsor, Bloxam & Company, home of the coconut fiber stormwater inlet filter. That is super easy to install and maintain. Make sure you go check them out. That's Bloxam & Company. You can check them out at bloxam.com. That's BLOCKSOM.com. And we'll see you on the next episode.